another reason why the American people are grateful, the majority of the American people, that President Biden has not taken a page out of his predecessor's playbook as it relates to global engagement and global leadership, because certainly we could be in a different place.
Because as we all know, elections matter. And when folks vote, they order what they want, and in this case, they got what they asked for. I went off script a little bit.
You just said that, less supply raises prices. It's not in our strategic interest to reduce the supply. Yeah. We also know, the president as recently as yesterday talked about increasing domestic manufacturing to bring down prices on inflated items like goods. So why not apply the same logic to energy and increase domestic production here?
Well, there are 9,000 approved oil leases that the oil companies are not tapping into currently. So I would ask them that question.
Is there nothing that the administration can do to get those providers back to pre-pandemic levels?
Do you think the oil companies don't have enough money to drill on the places that have been pre-approved?
Just asking.
I would point that question to them, and we can talk about it more tomorrow when you learn more.
Do you think that opening the Keystone pipeline and having more energy-friendly policies might do that?
The Keystone pipeline has never been operational. It would take years for that to have any impact. I know a number of members of Congress have suggested that, but that is a proposed solution that has no relationship or would have no impact on what the problem is. We here all agree is an issue.
So during those years where it would take to bring down prices, as you're saying, we should just continue to buy Russian oil?
Well, again, Jackie, I think you're familiar with a number of steps we've taken, a historic release from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Let me finish. What we can do over time, and what this is all a reminder of in the president's view, is our need to reduce our reliance on oil. The Europeans need to do that. We need to do that. If we do more to invest in clean energy, more to invest in other sources of energy, that's exactly what we can do to prevent this from happening in the future. We welcome any Republicans from joining us in that effort. Go ahead.
As long as we're buying Russian oil, though, aren't we financing the war?
Well, Jackie, again, it's only about 10% of what we're importing. I've not made any announcement about any decision on that front, but our objective here and our focus is to be very clear, and I think you all heard the president convey this in his speech the other night. The reason why we are seeing volatility in the global oil markets, the reason why the price of gas is going up, is not because of steps the president has taken. They are because President Putin.
But he'll never gain the hearts and souls of the Iranian people. He'll never extinguish their love of freedom.
So yesterday you said, less oil supply. You said it again today. It raises prices, and you said so I asked the American Petroleum Institute about those 9,000 leases that you've been talking about. The president and CEO of that group says that a lot of policies that have been put in place by this administration, including a ban on new development of federal lands and federal waters, is really hindering American energy development during a critical time. Also, he says the royalty fees increasing on drilling discourages investment. So are there any plans to reverse any of these policies to encourage investment?
I think he may have avoided your question. Because the fact is that onshore alone, as of the start of this year, the industry had more than 9,000 unused approved permits to drill in the United States. I didn't hear him speak to that in particular. And of the more than 37 million acres under lease offshore and onshore to the oil and gas industry, nearly 60% are currently non-producing. Now, obviously, our view on drilling over the long term is different, I would suspect, than the person you spoke to, which is that what overall we need to do here is reduce our dependence on oil. Europeans are doing that, we're doing that, and I think what we're all going through now in this discussion of banning oil imports and the volatility in the global markets, oil markets, is a reminder of that. But there's no shortage of drilling leases that can be used domestically to enhance production in this moment. The oil and gas industry is literally sitting on stockpiled leases and permits.
You can go back and look at the record. We're the ones who advocated otherwise. Here's the deal. This administration has stopped offshore production, prevented new lease sales, prevented onshore production. This majority has tried to impose a $10,000 per year, per mile pipeline fee, tried to raise royalty fees, increase severance taxes on energy, on domestic energy.
What should they be doing practically at this moment, considering the price of gas is going to affect them?
Of course it is, as I've been saying, and that's why we've been focused on it for weeks, if not months, to ensure we are taking every step, the president is taking every step to reduce that impact. The release of his Strategic Petroleum Reserve, 30 million barrels that he announced, but we would say directly to consumers, the president is going to do everything we can to reduce the impact, to make sure that we are working with our partners around the world to address the volatility in the global oil markets, to consider a range of options that he can continue to take to reduce the impact that they're feeling at the pump. And this has been front and center on his mind since
the Biden administration has to be able to make a decision. Currently, they're dominated by an environmentalist perspective that somehow Saudi Arabia and Russia are producing energy cleaner than the United States. And they're so consumed with the green footprint of the United States that they're ignoring even their own numbers. If you look at the Biden administration numbers and you look at their numbers and say, what will the worldwide oil and gas usage be in 2050, they continue to show increasing numbers. But at the same time, they're trying to decrease production in the United States by new requirements on FERC, on pipelines, new requirements on export for natural gas, continue to be able to limit access to capital through the Federal Reserve, through the nominees that are in place. They're continuing to find ways to produce less in America, even though their own numbers show there will be a greater need in 2050 than what there is now. What they're really saying is, we don't want to produce that in America. We want Russia and OPEC to be able to produce it, even though it needs to be done and will be done. In a committee hearing yesterday here in the United States Senate, one of my Democrat colleagues said, what we need to do is to tell the people in Europe that we will produce heat pumps for you, and then we need to start producing more heat pumps here in America. Well, I'm sure that really is very comforting to the people of Europe that in the next 15 to 20 years we'll produce enough heat pumps to ship to you while you're cut off from oil and have no access to natural gas to heat your homes.
Will there be anything in the speech to talk about reversing some of those policies, for example, either Keystone Pipeline or allowing our oil and gas companies to pursue federal oil and gas leases, even while we try to transition in the future and with a smart path to greener energy?
Well, I would say, Dana, the president shares the concern about any impact on gas prices, on energy prices for the American people. And that's why a range of options remain on the table. He already recently tapped into the Strategic Petroleum Reserve just last fall, which had an impact. But I would say the Keystone Pipeline.
But the impact, Jen, that was a blip. It was a 10-cent thing, but it doesn't last.
But Dana, the policies you mentioned, I know Senator Cotton and others have mentioned these. They are not policies that would address the issue at all. This Keystone Pipeline, it would take years for that to have an impact on prices.